Okay, so here we are with another Masters of the Universe Origins unboxing, and this one is Terror. But before we get started with that, let's have a look at some custom stuff that I made. Most appropriate for this episode, since it is Snakeman focused. You can see that I've made a new alternate head for my Cobra Khan action figure with the flared hood, which I'd hoped they would have made an alternate head like this when they made the Origins figure, but they didn't, so I had to make my own. And then what I worked on today mostly is I made an Origins version of Conan the Barbarian. But that's not all. I used the same parts, 3D printed, found them on cults3d.com, and I made myself a Masterverse version of Conan the Barbarian. I already had the sword from another kit, which was to make a an old school 5 point of articulation style Masters of the Universe Conan, but I found this head and this necklace, so I could go ahead and make an Origins version, which I really wanted to do for a long time. So, oops, knock the Masterverse version over. Let me go ahead and pick him up. But yeah, I'm probably gonna do some more work on him, like put an actual furry loincloth on him rather than this leathery one. But other than that, it looks pretty cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and open up Terror. So here's a picture on the back, and we see this is old Eternia because Castle Grayskull is still gleaming white, hasn't been covered in a bunch of moss yet. So that's what it looked like during the time of King Grayskull. And I believe this character's name is Sharella, that's riding on the pterodactyl there. Is that Turbodactyl? I think that might be Turbodactyl. But you can see Terror is yelling at her because he has a sonic scream, which makes it an odd choice for this head because you would think for a screaming character, you'd want to have an open mouth, but instead they use the head of Whiplash, who not only has a closed mouth, but an extra closed mouth. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But no dialogue or anything on the back because this is a multi-language package, but it does demonstrate how you can swap out the armaments on his prosthetic arm and give him a longer neck. And then the cross-cell artwork with Lord Grasp, Terror, and the cartoon collection versions of Merman and Stratos. So let's go ahead and open them up. And the comic book fell out, but it's the same comic book we already saw with Lord Grasp. And unfortunately, since it's in multiple languages, that means I won't be able to read it because there's nothing to read. And like with Lord Grasp, he was just kind of card back was just kind of barely glued on. So let's go ahead and set that aside. And this was the one out of these two that I was the least excited about. Like they're both Kit Bash figures, but Lord Grasp I thought was one that kind of is the best possible Kit Bash. And this guy I feel like is a little weird. But we're gonna get into the reasons why when I get him opened up. But yeah, he uses Whiplash's head for one thing. And Whiplash is a character that to me has a very distinctive face. So I don't know if Whiplash was the best guy to use as a recolored head. Even Beastman, like, worked okay when they recolored him to be Moss Man. And likewise Stinkor when they recolored him to be from Merman, you know. But Whiplash, I don't know. I don't know if this works, but we're gonna have a look at it anyway. But like I said, one of Terror's powers is supposed to be he has this sonic scream, like Black Canary or something. But they pick a character that not only has a closed mouth, and I don't have the Origins version of Whiplash yet, by the way. So this is my first time seeing their particular version of the head sculpt, which does look a lot like the original. Not only does he have a closed mouth, but Whiplash actually has like this extra tooth growing out of his nose, which is just strange. I'm just gonna say this. I think it's a septum piercing. I think he's got a septum piercing with a tooth attached to it. I think that's what the deal is there. But yeah, definitely Whiplash's head. No getting around that. So let's go ahead and have a look at his accessories. And rattling around loose in the package is the Lasertron because he does reuse Trapjaw's arm, which I kind of feel like is strange because I kind of feel like that should be something that's unique to Trapjaw himself, but apparently not. And he's got the vicious claw. You got to have that. And I'm sorry, that was the hook. This is the vicious claw. So, or the old commercial where that kid is goofy. So he's still got the hook, he's still got the claw, and he's still got the lasertron. All right, and then the other two accessories, which is these are the ones that came with Ratlore, because he reuses the torso of Ratlore. So he has the extra neck extension that Ratlore has, and he has the tail piece, which is a separate piece in Origins. Now on Ratlore, you just kind of like snap it into the back here, but since he's got this Trapjaw armor piece at the side, and it's permanently attached. You ain't getting that off. I've seen people talk about that in videos. You have to kind of slide the Ratlore tail under there, and it snaps right in. So we got it in there. So much like Lord Grasp, like I said, this guy's kind of a hodgepodge of various pieces. And do they work as well as Lord Grasp? Well, you can be the judge for yourself, but uh, he's kind of an odd duck, I think. But he is an imposing looking figure. There's no doubt. He's got that large Ratlore torso, so he's a big bulky dude, and he's got that Triclops arm. So Trapjaw. Sorry, I don't know what's a Triclops. He's got the Trapjaw arm, and it looks like most of the Lasertron is kind of matte, but you see how these things here are kind of glossy. That's interesting. Let's see. Since I have the initial release of Trapjaw here, we can have a look, and it does look like it's maybe a little bit glossy there, but not to the extent that it is on Terroar. Hey, why did you take my arm? I just bought it at the store. So, what would have been actually cooler, I think, and they could have even done this with the vintage version of Terror if they'd have actually produced him back then. Is if you're going to go ahead and give him the Trapjaw arms, just give him two Trapjaw arms because he's like a snake man. So maybe he actually doesn't biologically have arms. He just has two prosthetics that are attached to him because because he didn't have arms initially, so he just kind of got robot arms on him. But you can see most of the figures were used from Ratlore. You got the arm from Trapjaw, and then you've got Mosquitor's boots of all things. So he's got these metal boots. So I guess we can imagine that in the accident, whenever he was wounded and lost this arm, maybe he lost his feet as well, and they had to put robot feet on him. So that's the deal with that. Now, unlike Trapjaw, there's no place to store these extra weapons. So you just stick whichever one on there you want to have on there, I guess. And then the last accessory is the neck extension, which the original Ratlore had a neck that popped out, but they don't do that kind of stuff in Origins usually. So instead, we have an extending piece that we put in between the head and the neck. And I gotta say that actually does make it work a little bit better for me because it kind of distracts from the whiplashness of his head, having that long neck on there. So I don't think it works as well as the designers intended. Like I said, I think that Whiplash's head is just a little too distinct to pass off as a snake man, and he doesn't really look much like a snake to me. He always looked kind of like a lizard, and an ugly one at that, but not much like a snake. I don't think that it works very well. Like a snake usually doesn't have like a fin on the top of his head. That's more of a lizard thing. But he's got the Ratlore tail, so he's kind of got a lot of things going on here with the Ratlore tail and the Ratlore neck and the Trapjaw arm and the Mosquitor boots. Is like it's kind of hard to give this guy a nickname. So he's got the sonic power, and that's where his name comes from, which is the one thing that I feel like isn't very well represented by this figure, since, like I said, he's got a closed mouth. And there's my Aunt June. Hi, Aunt June. It's nice to see you. I know you like to catch these live when you can, so it's nice that we're able to do this. So welcome. So yeah, but this shoulder piece is glued on here, and I think it would have been better if it had been like a removable piece. because then it would have been a little easy. I popped it on fairly easily, but it would have made it even a little bit easier to pop the tail on. So let's have a look at the articulation. So Whiplash, I'm sorry, Terroar can't look up very high, but he's got a little more articulation if you got him. Really, like the way that this head is made, he can't look up or down very well, just because of the way that Whiplash's head was originally designed in the first place. But thankfully, the neck piece does give us a little more articulation. Of course, it does rotate all the way around at both points of articulation, and the arms rotate all the way around at the shoulders. This is on that hinged sort of arm that the later versions of Trapjaw had. You're saying Triclops, I don't know. And then, of course, that's got a single joint of articulation there, which bends in about that far, great range of motion there, and it rotates all the way around. But of course, it's bumping into this rather large torso. And then, of course, the organic arm has a single joint of articulation that rotates all the way around. Aunt June says it's a new action figure to me, but interesting. Well, he certainly is interesting in the Chinese sense. Now, I noticed that, and I really like this particular paint application here. He's got a very glossy, very dark purple chest, whereas like it's still a dark purple, but not anywhere near as dark as what's on its chest. And I think that's a good color. But the underside of his neck is a completely different color, where it's this sort of dull red. So I don't know. Maybe they should have continued the glossy purple up the neck. I think that might have looked better. This is a carryover from Ratlore. He's got like what looks like a wrist cuff, but it's still colored like the same way as his skin. And of course, that happened a lot with Masters Universe. Like He-Man's bracers weren't painted in on the original figure, so he just had flesh-colored bracers. But this is sculpted to match the scale pattern on his wrist, so I'm not sure if that's supposed to be part of his flesh or not. He's got furry trunks. He's got a black belt with the Snake Men logo on it, and I believe that's all the same stuff we saw on Ratlore. On the original vintage figure, if it had been made, of course, it would have been entirely the Ratlore torso, so that makes sense. It would have been entirely the Ratlore torso, entirely the Mosquitor legs, and the Trapjaw arm, and the Whiplash head. So, much like I was talking about with Lord Grasp in our previous episode, and I've got Lord Grasp over here because he's awesome. So we can see him with his assortment mate. Like with Lord Grasp, this is a figure that was completely kit bashed together from existing parts. And this whole wave was going to be a figure that was completely kit bashed together from existing parts. And we don't know what the names of these characters would have been if they'd have been produced in the vintage line. These are modern names that were given to them when they were made for Masters Universe Classics. We don't know how the original figures would have been colored had they actually been produced at that time, because they made up they were just black and white illustrations, so they made up new color schemes when they did the versions for Masters Universe Classics. But there were several characters created for this assortment, good guy characters also. So we would have had the characters that we now know as Plasmar and Slamurai, and what was the other one? There was another one, I think. I don't remember who it was. But yeah, I do have Slamurai, of course. I'd showed him off before. So he's going to be a future episode coming up. And they've not produced Plasmar yet, but hopefully I'll be able to get a hold of him once he comes out. So he should be a pretty cool figure. I do think out of these figures that Terror was probably the weakest design, and the weak point is that Whiplash head. I think that there were other snake heads that would have been more appropriate for them to use and would have worked better. However, that having been said, I still think he makes for a pretty impressive action figure, and he's definitely worth picking up, especially like if you just need more soldiers to fill out your snake men. And up until recently, I haven't had that many snake men because I got a snake face at Target a while back, and then of course I managed to get the loose Cobra Con and made him a new head, and then we've got Lord Grasp, who is my favorite of the proper Snake Men. Like Cobra Khan just kind of got retconned into being a Snake Man, so I don't know if he really counts. But as far as like the ones that were bespoke Snake Men, I think out of the ones I have so far, Lord Grasp is definitely my favorite. Uh, but Terror is not bad, especially if you want somebody just to kind of fill out your ranks. Now that having been said, I don't have Ratlore yet, but looking at the Ratlore parts on this guy, I really want to get Ratlore now because he's a pretty impressive figure as far as the build goes. I mean, you can just compare the torso on this guy. He's huge compared to the He-Man torso. This one, and He-Man's already a big guy, but this guy's like way bigger. So yeah, they did a pretty good job with him. I think Origins did a pretty good job of executing the design that we had, not only in the original Errol McCarthy illustrations, but also what wound up being the coloration that they picked for classics and everything. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this episode. I got to end it because I'm almost out of StreamYard minutes, but don't worry, I'll have more on the 20th. So I will be back on the 20th with another episode. At the earliest, it'll be the 20th. But we'll just see how it goes. But I definitely have a lot more stuff to open. We're still doing Snake Men, so our next figure is going to be the Snake Men Infiltrator. And since I have the Palace Guard, which is essentially the same figure, those two will be opened in the same episode. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, make sure you like and subscribe, all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Terror. Am I being too harsh on this guy? Or do you think he's just another Kit Bash? I think he's a pretty good Kit Bash, but not as good as not as good as Lord Grasp. Lord Grasp was awesome. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.